even if I were to prophesy that, it was 100% certain. It's not actually going to help your business very much. And of course, you can't be certain about that. I mean, you can be certain there'll be some climate change, but you're not going to be able to predict what it is or really tell that to your audience, and your audience isn't going to be very happy about it. In fact, if you could actually tell the audience what was going to happen to them, they would not thank you. They would be upset with you. And if you really told somebody their genuine future, they would hang themselves. People don't want to know, really. What they want are options and like a reason to get out of bed in the morning. People want a reason to live. They don't want certainty. So if you do futurist work for companies or organizations, which I have been known to do because I hang out with Global Business Network and Arlington Institute and other kinds of professional futurist organizations, what you would get would be some scenario forecasting. And you might want to consider doing this, right? And what happens in scenario forecasting? Well, it's kind of like psychoanalysis or encounter therapy, if it's done properly. When you know what your future is, because you're an organization and you have a certain set of goals, but you don't really communicate it between one another particularly well, because you've got a very different set of contributors. I mean, you've got bloggers, law enforcement people, business people, technicians. I just now learned that you have some terrorists and some mercenaries and some apostles and probably some assassins, I don't know. But the thing that's good about a futurist scenario is that it breaks up the little groups that you're already in and puts you into some new little groups for a little while. And then you can compare notes across your institutional boundaries and kind of find the things that you don't know that you know. And a good futurist scenario will bring out the tacit knowledge that your organization already has. And in any case, you don't want to know the future. What you really want to know is your future, right? Your own organization's thing. So trying to know the entire future is basically impossible. It's too large a topic, sort of like all of history. It's more like, well, we're a newspaper and we're a website and we're also kind of the voice of Italy's innovative community, and we've got some creative class things. Sort of, how do we know where that's going to go? I did a running start, then you jump from there. You don't just sort of say, what if? What if flying saucers arrived? Have any saucers arrived in the last 10 years? No. Have any saucers arrived in the last 20 years, the last 100 years? Probably not. Maybe in the 1940s, when there are a lot of saucer reports. Is it very likely there'll be flying saucers in the next 6 months? Not really. All right, another good rule of thumb, pace layers. Not all of the future changes at the same speed. Everything changes, but they change at different paces. So the thing that changes least is nature. Nature hardly changes at all. It evolves. Then there's culture. Culture really changes pretty slowly. On top of culture, there's infrastructure, which means the physical things we've imposed on nature and culture. Roads, walls, dams, highways, telephone systems, huge, large-scale things. Those change very slowly. On top of that, governance. Government will change faster than the rest. In Italy, government changes rather often. But it only appears to change because it's always the same guys who are actually... So, Italy has a culture, but not really a government. And the Italian governmental culture changes scarcely at all, but the government label changes a lot. On top of government, commerce. Commerce changes faster than government. On top of commerce, fashion, the news. And you're in the fashion business, right? But most of the things in the future are not novelties. Most things in the future are not fashion. They're not things that change very fast. They're not interesting. Like a disaster. Where the future is in R&D and tech startups, and just startups per se, and in design. And you can still read science. I'm very interested in science. I have like an honorary doctorate in science. So, I used to be really on top of it. I've written for Nature magazine. As science fiction writers go, I really like science. I don't write that much science fiction. The stuff I write, which is marketed as science fiction, is really design fiction, architecture fiction. I'd even call it infrastructure fiction. And people can't tell the difference. I mean, that's what our current epic is about. We don't really care that much about basic science or the laws of science. There aren't a lot of people going into physics. Even in computer science, there aren't a lot of people going into computer science. People into computers are going into business management. They talk about stuff like business model, long tail, etc. We're in a very pragmatic era where the principle matters for nothing, and the model or the startup or the demo counts for everything. And that's where I find new things. The other area that I have found very useful over many years, and I learned this from Kevin Kelly, who I notice is on the front of your structure here. He actually has more wires on him than I do this morning. Kevin, who is the former managing editor of Wired, was the first one to teach me to look for new language. Look for social areas that are generating new language. And naturally, being a journalist, you would want to look for places that are generating accurate language. Accurate, eye-catching, exciting new language. No, that's not what you want. You actually want to look for places that are generating very confused language. Self-contradictory language, in particular, like an oxymoron, is a sure sign of something genuinely novel, like, say, wireless cable. Like wireless cable. What the hell is he talking about? You can't have wireless cable. Okay, wireless cable is a contradiction in terms. And it means there's like a breakdown of previous definitions. I mean, something is like actually coming out of a closet there. Oxymorons and synonyms. It's like people are doing something and there's like 80 names for it. Generally, there's a lot of acronyms, 3-letter thing. Well, I do DVD for the BCD and the AGG. It's like, why? Because they haven't actually invented any language for what they're doing. And there are areas like the police and the military where people speak in acronyms because they don't want to ever become mainstream. They're actually trying to hide what they're doing. The police, if you talk to police, it's like, we got a 405 on the EXP, and then we have the XYZ on the, and this is a jargon. But it's like, it's an area of technical expertise which they want protected. They don't actually want that to become mainstream. The same goes for the military. So when you see people doing that who are trying to become mainstream, I mean, they really want a popular hit, but they still don't seem to know what they're talking about. That's a place where journalists and novelists, even literary people, can do a lot of good work. Because you're better at words than they are. And you can look for those words and you can systematically look for them now. You can go out and you can Google them. You can put out Google alerts on terms. You can look for tags on delicious. You can do, word searches for synonyms, track them. You can go to like Google Zeitgeist, see if there's peaks in words, things coming out of. Now, in a non-Anglophone language, it's a little more difficult because they're more scattered, or you get various translations of other terms. But working in a non-Anglophone language also has some advantages.